Well, Mary, when we left off last week, you were talking about Brian and some of the lessons that you had learned with your brother and sister and some full circle moments. So wherever you want to start, we'll pick up and take off from there.
Okay, so I think I'll start where, we went through a year and a half of chemo, and nothing was working. We would do good through our 21 days of chemo, and then we would get to our 7-day rest period. And in that 7-day rest period, we would go like 100 steps backwards every time. So eventually it was, okay, well, let's do a bone marrow biopsy, and let's do another kind of test to see where we're at since we've done all the chemos we can do. That's when they found out the multiple myeloma was aggressive. So every time we would get in that 7-day rest period, there were cells that were hiding from the chemo, and they would pop back out and they would multiply, multiple myeloma. So at that point, the doctor came to me and said, he probably only has 2 to 3 more months, and there's nothing else we can do. And I'm fixing to go back there and talk to him. And I said, please don't let me do that. She was a young doctor, and she was, we were hard for her because she had a child our age, Marley's age, and she never treated anybody as young as Brian, and we were a young couple, And so we got home that night and put Marley to bed, and I'll never forget, I laid on the bed and I told him that, that he probably only had 2 to 3 more months to live, and that nothing was working and there was nothing else they could do. We could try this, we could do this. I mean, there were options that me and him could have probably tried. But one thing I always told Brian during this journey, and I think this is very important for people to know, is I wanted him to be here, and I loved him, and I would have done anything for him, and I wanted him to fight. But I feel like it's important for people to understand that when that person is weary and tired and they can't do it anymore, to support them. Because I wasn't in Brian's shoes. I was on the other side of it, but I wanted him to know if he ever got to that point that I would just keep loving him, and I was going to be okay with that. No, I didn't like it. No, that wasn't what I wanted, but I wasn't going to put the pressure on him as, please don't leave me, please don't leave me. I didn't want him to feel that way. He fought the most for Marley. I mean, she was, 2.5, 3 years old. That was his child, his only child. And the biggest fear he had was that she wouldn't know who he was. Of course, I looked at him and was like, do you know me? I was like, have we met? I was like, I will always make sure she knows you. That was not that he was questioning who I was. It was just like, Brian, I will make sure she does not forget you. Yeah. I mean, we talk about Daddy all the time. I mean, I tell her stories all the time. She asks, even still today, as a teenager, tell me that story again, Mama. She wants to know. So that was never a problem for me, but I knew it was a struggle for him. So that leads me into this little story. My best friend from Alabama was pregnant during this time. Well, let me say some of this time. And when we learned 2 and 3 months, he, for like a 6-week span, he was in and out of the hospital every week. It was just awful. And after that 6th week, he just looked at me and he was like, Mary, I can't. He was like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It was awful. And we chose to go home on hospice. So we went home on hospice. And during this first couple of weeks of hospice, my best friend was about, I think she was 26 weeks pregnant. I think. I could be wrong. But she was up there. And she started having some things happen. Well, I didn't know because I was so wrapped up in my world, although she kept me posted on most things. At the same time, she tiptoed around some things because I had so much going on. Well, I'll never forget the phone call. She called me and she said, I need to talk to you, but I need you to go somewhere where you're by yourself. So I went out to my garage. I was all by myself. Nobody was around me. My in-laws were there. My mother-in-law, my father-in-law, they were with Brian. So I went out to my garage and she told me that she had lost her baby. So we talked and we cried. And she didn't know whether she should tell me or not. So she called my brother, who's my voice of reason. And she said, what do I do? Do I tell her? Do I wait? And he was like, no, you absolutely tell her. That's what she would want, because Rod knew. So we talked and we cried. And the one thing she said was, will you please ask Brian to take care of my baby girl when he gets there? Well, it was just ironic because it was a baby girl, and here Brian's struggling because of our baby girl, leaving her. Well, I dry myself up, and I get up and I go back inside, and I walk into my bedroom, and Brian looks at me. Now, granted, we've been on hospice for probably 2 weeks now. His dad is in there. Again, nobody knows that this has happened but me. His dad is in there, and Brian looks at me, and he said, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm okay. And he said, whose baby died? And I said, what? He said, somebody in our family's baby died. And I was like, how do you know that? He was like, I don't know, but somebody told me. Nobody knew that but me. So you can't tell me that somebody from the other side told him that this happened. Why would he ask me? Nobody heard me. I was outside. Nobody was around me. So that was another little full circle moment, because I even told him who it was. And Vicky's our family. She's not just my best friend. She's my sister. And, I told him, what she wanted. I told him that she asked him to take care of Emery when he got there, And in my head, all I could think was, it's just ironic that God did that, because that was a girl and we have a girl. I can't explain that. It's just... It was just one of those things, So a few more weeks go by, and every day something is different. And the hospice nurse tells us, the cancer's taking over. You're going to see different things happen. At one point, he twitched a lot, and the cancer was attacking his nervous system, and it was crazy weird. And there was just a lot of things that were different. His mother pretty much moved in with me and stayed with me the whole time. I did it the first week by myself, but after that I asked her, because I needed to rest and just kind of have that off and on. Marley had went to a family reunion with her poppy and her aunt at the end, so that was good for her, just because that was a struggle. Do I keep her here? Do I not? I didn't know what to do, but she went with them. One morning or one night, I was in the bathroom, in our bathroom, which was in our bedroom, and I heard Brian talking. And he talked a lot during this time, but you couldn't really understand most of what he said. He had one clear week, and that was probably the first week. Well, I was in the bathroom, and he just kept talking, and he would laugh and he would talk, and I couldn't really understand what he was saying, but I could tell he was having a conversation. So I left my bathroom, went into my bedroom, and just sat down on my bed right beside of him. And he didn't acknowledge me. I just sat there for about 20 minutes. And I just still couldn't understand anything he was saying, but it was just a weird conversation. Well, the next thing I know, he says, all right, man, I'll see you soon. And I was like, huh. And I said, Brian, and he was done with the conversation. I said, Brian, who are you talking to? And he was like, Brian. I was like, you were talking to Brian? And he was like, yeah, Brian. And I was like, Brian Miller? He was like, yes, Brian Miller, Boo's brother. Boo was his best friend, had been since they were 14. His name was Byron, but they called him Boo. And Brian, his brother, passed away of a heart attack years before Brian and I ever moved to Alabama. So 10 years or more he had been gone. And he literally sat there and told me he was having a conversation with Brian Miller, his best friend's brother. And I mean, it was just, I just was like, what? I mean, again, you can't explain that, but I believed him because he literally was having a conversation and he was laughing and he was being Brian. And I just was like, okay, all right. He was preparing. You could just tell. Well, I'll never forget, I got up the morning of Emery's funeral. That was my best friend's little girl. And Brian's blood pressure was low that morning. I had kind of been up all early morning with him, up and down. I could just tell things had changed during that morning. And I was getting ready, and I didn't feel like I should go. Something kept telling me maybe you shouldn't go. And he looked over at me, and he had not been cleared in a while. And he looked over at me and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm getting ready to go." I said, "But I don't think I should." And he said, "Yes, you should." And I said, "But Brian, I don't want you to leave me while I'm gone." He was like, "I'm not going to leave you. I'll be here." He said, "But I want you to go, and I want you to come right back." And I said, "Are you sure?" And I still wasn't sure. And he was like, "Yes, you need to go." He said, "But I will be here, but just come right back." He told me that several times. Well, because Vicky would have understood, it was okay. Well, I kept my phone in my hand with my ringer cut off, and I told his mom, because his mom was there, and I was like, "If you need me, all you got to do is call me or text me. All I have to do, I will walk out." I was like, "She will know. It's not a problem." So I went and had my phone in my hand the whole time. Got through the service and talked with her for a few minutes, and then I left to go home. Well, on the way home, I called Nana and said, "What's going on? Is everything okay?" She said, "Well, we're going to have to start giving him medicine every 15 minutes." And his breathing had changed at that point, and his blood pressure was still low. And the nurse had come and was coming back. So when I got to my house, when I got on my road, I passed the nurse coming out. I was going in. I got home at 1:30, and at 1:45, Brian took his last breath. He waited on me. He did not leave me. And I got to hold his hand and be with him and tell him I love him and hug him, and he took his last breath. And all that sounds crazy, but I wouldn't have had it any other way, and neither would he have. He wouldn't have either. Marley wasn't at home. She was with her aunt and her uncle, her poppy. And her and I had that conversation before she left that, Daddy could be in heaven when she gets back. That means he might not be here. Now, that's a conversation you don't want to have with a 4-year-old, that your daddy is dying, and how do you explain that, and he's going to go to heaven. But hospice was great. The social worker gave me some books that we could read, and we just sat and had a conversation. And you just have to remember the innocence of a small child and how they, you can tell them something, and 5 seconds later they moved on to something else. It's hard, but it's true. Well, I'll never forget when she got home. After that, we did all we needed to do, and they came and got him. And and then a day later, they got home because we told them, and then they came home the next day. And Marley she ran to my arms, and we, hugged. And the whole time she was looking around my shoulder, because we had moved his bed out and just, tried to clean up or whatever. And, "Where's Daddy, Mama? Where's Daddy?" So we had to go into the bedroom, and we sat down on the bed, and I told her, and she was okay. She was 4 years old, she was all right. But she was just taking care of Mama is what she did. She'd always get me a Kleenex or, just taking care of her Mama. And then we had the service. We had the service at our house. Me and Brian talked about it. We lived on 30 acres, and we built a house in the middle of it. And we lived on a creek that ran into the lake. And down at the creek, we had our favorite spot that we would go to and hang out and build fires and fish. And so my brother came and had a couple other guys help. And we got that all cleared down there and got it to where people could. I got like 3 gators I borrowed from some of our friends, and they transport people down there because it was some older people, and it was a hard place to walk to or whatnot. And we had a beautiful service for him, and we planted a tree there, and he was cremated, so we put ashes in the tree. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful service for him, and is exactly what he would wanted, because Brian always said the church was, the woods were his church. That was his thing. If he needed to clear his mind, he needed to be closer to the Lord, he would get on the four-wheeler and ride out into the woods. That's just what he did. That's just who he was. And then after that, we sold the house, and I moved back. Me and Marley moved back here. And
how long afterward?
Not long. I couldn't afford our home, and we got the paperwork and stuff ready before he passed, so that would be done. And Brian left me in wonderful shape. I mean, like, I only had like one debt that I had to pay off of that me and him had, and that was it. And the realtor we had bought the land from, so he was wonderful in helping me sell. And the cool thing about that too is we didn't advertise except for in the paper, because he knew what we were going through. So we didn't want people in and out, and we didn't want a sign at the end of our driveway. And one Sunday I was sitting there by myself with Marley and our dogs, and somebody knocked on my door, and it was a lady, and she had saw ads in the paper and was riding around looking at the houses, and she found mine. And I was like, and she wanted to make sure that that was the house for sale. And I said, yes, ma'am, it is. And I said, but please reach out to my realtor to, make an appointment or whatnot. So the next day they came to look at it, and they loved it. This is exactly what they were looking for. And I didn't want to just sell to anybody, although I didn't really have a choice. I just kept praying that God would send the right people, because the house was special. Brian built it in a different way than most people build a house. He was an engineer, so his mind thought differently. It was steel framed, so it wasn't wood framed. Most people didn't build homes like that. And the couple that came to look at it loved it. And the guy, her husband, was also an engineer. So my father-in-law was able to walk around the whole house with him and tell him everything that Brian did. And he got it. Like, he understood it. He loved it. Like, they were in love with it. So they were the ones that bought it. And I mean, it went to a wonderful family. They still have it. And I get to see it on Facebook from time to time, which is bittersweet. But I'm just happy that somebody lives in it that loves it as much as we did. And she had another baby while they were there. And when we closed on it, they told me, and it was a girl. So again, that was just like a cool full circle moment. And then we moved back here, and we've been here for 11 years now. We found a piece of property 1.5 miles from my brother, and I put a modular on it. And that's where me and Marley call home. And it's been good for her because she has Rod. That's probably her most go-to father figure, which I wouldn't have it any other way, and they're very close. And then, of course, my mom moved back. We moved her back down here, so she has grandma close by, which is wonderful. And then Grayson, her cousin, they've always been like brother and sister, although they've went through periods of really like brother and sister. But they are really close, and I know they have each other's backs. And now my best friend from Alabama and her son, they moved here, so they are our next door neighbor. They literally live right beside of us. So it's coming back home has been a good thing for me and Marley both, and having that support, and Marley seeing all my old, I have a small circle of friends, but they're old friends, and they're wonderful, and they're such support for us. And she's thrived since we've come back home. It's been a good thing. But my biggest thing is, I know it's a lot, and when I meet people and they start to know some of my story pieces by pieces, and they just look at me and think, how in the world have you lived this long? It's him. He's the reason that I live. He's my joy. He is my peace. He is my comfort. I mean, I can go on and on with words, but that's why. And one thing that I wake up every morning and remind myself of this, and I share this with people that have lost people. You got to hold on to that forever day. That day that you will never be separated again. That day that, you will see your loved ones, and that's it. That's eternity, right? I mean, there are days on this earth now that I'm ready for that more than I probably should be, but I'm ready. And when I get there, I can't wait to see. I mean, I have a Meemaw there that I never met, and my family tells me all the time that I'm just like her, and I can't wait to meet her and see her and be with her. And you have to hold on to that. You have to, and again, it's like I said in the beginning, death is a part of life. You have to accept it wholeheartedly, or you will not. I would never have made it through all this if I hadn't accepted it at a young age, and if God had not walked through that with me. And I just know that every day I have to turn to Him and say, okay, it's a new day. I know you're beside me, but help me through it. And no matter what, I know that I can get through whatever. Yes, I'm human. And yes, it's hard. And yes, I have my days where I cry all day, or I miss somebody. Or I was just telling my mom the other day, it seems like I have an anniversary or something every month of the year now. But you just keep going because He helps you. Because of Him, I keep going. I'll never forget one Sunday we were here, and Jimmy was doing a sermon, and we wrote down what Jesus meant to us and what He was to us. And one of my comments was, He is my joy and my peace. And he asked if anybody wanted to say what they wrote, to please say. And so I did. And he, with tears in his eyes, he said, and all the people in the room, you're the one that thinks that. But it's true. He is my reason. There is no other reason. I mean, of course, Marley and my family, but He's my number one reason, because if it weren't for Him, I would not be where I am today. I would not be who I am today. I'm thankful, as weird as this sounds, I'm thankful for all these trials and tribulations, because He's taught me, I've learned, I've grown in my faith. I mean, Brian was the hardest, but I grew so much in my faith through that, because I would never have made it through it without the Lord. So as weird as that might be to say, is I'm thankful for Him, because I have grown and I am who I am today. And I literally think every day about, how would Jesus want me to be today? How would Jesus want me to do in this situation? How would He want me to help this person? I think about it because, I mean, think about what He did for us. I'm not worthy of that. Are you worthy of that? I'm not worthy of that.
I'm not.
I could not imagine sacrificing my own child for other people. I couldn't imagine doing that. Never would want to. So you just have to know that everything happens for a reason, and you just keep going, because He's not going to let you down, and He's going to carry you no matter what. So no matter what throws at me, it might be hard, and I might have issues with it, and I might not always turn and do the right thing in the beginning, but I know that I will turn back and say, okay, Lord, this is yours. I'm done. I'm just that ugly human side of me tried to take over, and it's not going to. So here you go. Just help me through it, and I know I'll get there, because you got me. You're carrying me. It's not easy, but it is life.
What brought you here to Maplewood?
Well, Marley and I started going to a church in Louisville, and we loved it, but it dwindled and ended up eventually closing. And Maplewood's always been a church that we visited, because Rod and Heather go here, and Jim and Una, and I just have always known so many people that go here, and I've always enjoyed visiting and anything that we've ever come to here. And so after Trinity closed, me and Marley started talking about, where did you want to go? And it's important to me that Marley has a say in anything that we do. And she was like, Mama, I want to go to Maplewood. And I said, okay, well, let's start going. So we just started coming to Maplewood, and I've always felt like I fit right in here. And I mean, there's been people that I didn't know, but I know now and I love. But I've always felt like this has been just an easy transition to fit into, and family, and I just always felt like I fit in, and I loved Jimmy. He was always one of my favorite people to listen to, and even through the trials we're having, I still have enjoyed. I've enjoyed Eddie, and I always enjoyed Drake and Curtis, and I like being fed. I have to be fed.
Now, where does Marley go to school?
That's complicated. She goes to Starmount High now.
I think, yeah, okay. All right.
She started going to Forbush. She started at Forbush, but this year we moved to Starmount.
Okay. All right. What is it like with a teenage girl? Do you remember when you were a teenage girl?
I do. And I think about those times. I wasn't a bad teenager, though. I mean, my mom and dad had lost 2 kids, so I wasn't crazy because I always respected my parents, and I didn't want to do things to worry them, or especially, my mom, because I already knew she was worried, and I just didn't want them to ever think that I was doing something stupid to harm to put myself in a bad situation. But they knew me and they trusted me. But I would still make stupid decisions. And, if I made that decision, I would say, okay, if I get caught, my mom and dad are going to do this, Sometimes I would still think, it's okay, I'm going to do it anyway. And then sometimes I wouldn't. But Marley and I talk about those things, and I tell her that. I'm like, if you make that decision, just know that there are consequences. I think in life, especially in this world, I had a healthy fear of my parents. I wasn't afraid of them, but I was afraid of the circumstances, and I knew there were. And that's how I've raised Marley, really. I don't want her to be afraid of me, but I want her to always know that she can come to me, even with the circumstance. Don't be afraid to come and tell me. But there will be a circumstance. But no matter what, I'm always going to love you, and we're going to get through it. But you got to come and tell me. You made the choice. We got to figure it out. It is what it is. But with anything in life, I tell her, just please come to me and talk to me. It don't matter how bad it is. It don't matter how mad you think I'm going to be. Just please come and talk to me. And she does. And Marley's a good kid. She's a great kid. She's going to make dumb mistakes, I know, and she's going to make wrong decisions, I know, and she's not perfect, but I have just really, really prayed that I've talked enough, and that I keep talking, and that I just make sure she always knows that door is open. There are days that I want to pinch her head off, especially when I look into her room. It makes me just want to gag. And every day it's like, clean your room up. Oh,
I'm going to need pictures.
Please clean your room. Please clean your room. Every day I get tired of repeating myself. But I have to constantly remember she's a teenager and she's learning. But she's a great kid. She's a good kid. I can't complain. The Lord really blessed me. And that was another thing with Marley being a blessing to me and Brian. We weren't literally trying to have a child. It was time for us to have a child. The Lord blessed us with a child. And I honestly will always think about, he did that so I would have somebody. And I would always have the greatest piece of her dad with me, and that was her. I mean, because, we had her, and then 2.5 years later, he got sick. And then, a year and a half after that, he died. So if I didn't have Marley, it would have been even harder. I know it would have been. So she's just a great kid. And she's been through a lot, because after Brian passed away, that was in June of 2013, my dad passed away in January of 2014. And that was suddenly. I mean, he was sick and he had fallen, and it just went from bad to worse quickly. And he passed away, and that was her grandpa. And then right after him in October of 2014, her poppy passed away, which was Brian's dad. And that was her poppy. And so it was like three of the greatest men of her life were gone in a year's time. And she was 4 and 5 years old. That's a lot for a 4 and 5 year old to go through. But I've always, I try to remember that too, to lead by example, and for her to know that it's okay, that death is a part of life. And she's just a good kid. Marley's a good kid. And she loves Maplewood. She loves coming here. She loves the people. I think she's comfortable too, which is important.
If I'm not mistaken, I think I remember hearing that she had gotten her driver's permit.
Yeah. Yeah. She's doing good though. Super proud of her. But yeah, that's an experience that yeah. We came up here some when she was 14 and started practicing in the parking lot when nobody was here. And sometimes Drake would be here, and I'd text him and be like, don't come outside. But she's doing good. She's had them since May, and she's been driving on 77 some. she's brave, but she's doing really well with it. I just can't believe we're at this point in life already. I mean, it goes by so fast. I don't like that. I don't like that it goes by so fast. And she's not a little. I remember her little. I want her little.
Yeah.
You remember those little voices.
Oh yeah.
And those laughs, and that it just everything was funny and fun, and it still is. And I love every stage of life. I really do. But it's definitely harder as they get older. It's definitely. I thought little was hard, but no, I was just tired then. Now it's the talking and the checking in all the time, and the just making sure they're happy and their mental health is okay. And the world is just crazy. And then the relationship, I always constantly tell her, just talk to the Lord. When you're in that situation, just have a conversation with him. Just let him know so he can help you and guide you. That's a constant reminder. And I know she knows that, but I'd like to remind her because we all need reminding of it.
Have Boys entered the picture yet? And if so, how is Mama going to handle that?
Well, we started having crushes, but nothing but that. And when it first happened, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I'm not prepared for this. And those are the moments that I'm like, why am I by myself? Why do I have to do this alone, But I'll never forget the first one. We took my nephew home from school that day, and he got out of the car, and she was like, oh, I'm so glad he's gone. I have something to tell you. And so we started talking, and I was like, okay, well, that's cool. She wanted to tell me that she had a crush. And then it went into, they emailed each other, and he said some things. And before I could say anything, she was like, and Mama, that just sounded desperate. And I was like, no, we can just be friends. I'm good. And I was like, oh. I was like, she's listening, Lord. Thank you for that. Because she is actually listening to me. And that was what I was thinking when she was talking and telling me what he had said. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you, Jesus. So she's got a good head on her shoulders. So far, so good. She's not a dumb kid. She's a smart kid. So she's got a good head on her shoulders. Again, she's going to make mistakes. I know. I'm preparing myself for those. But I'm not, I used to not know. That was an uncharted territory for me. I was, how am I going to deal with her having a boyfriend? But so far, we've been okay.
You're obviously very protective of her,
yeah.
I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
At the same time, how protective is she of you?
I would say she is, without her knowing this, because I always tell her, I'm your mama first, I'll be your friend later. But we're best friends. We are. And, but I wouldn't tell her that right now. But
well, it's now recorded, and it's going to be out there.
That's fine. But I'm still her mama first. So
right.
Marley, I'm still your mama first, no matter what. And she knows that. She's pretty protective of me. She doesn't like to see me upset, and she comforts me, and we talk. I mean, me and Marley talk about everything. There's not many things that we don't talk about. I mean, of course, I don't tell her everything about adult, what's going on in the adult world, especially if I don't want her to get upset or I don't think she needs to know about it. But there's very little that we don't talk about. And I tell her all the time, what we do in our house stays in our house. It's between me and you. But yeah, she can be pretty protective, but she doesn't have to be. She knows. I take care of myself, and she knows. And she knows I'll take care of her. So it's, there's not much I don't know if there's much to protect me from right now. But yeah, she loves her mama. That's a good thing. I'm proud of her. She's a good kid.
Good deal. Anything else you'd like to get across?
I don't think so. I just want people to know that you got to turn to him. Just always turn to him. No matter how bad life is, you got to turn to him. He's got to be your number one. And I mean, I hope that my story will help. Even if it's just one person, I hope it helps people, because I'm okay. Every day I'm okay. I live every day and I breathe and I'm happy. And I mean, I have my moments, and life is hard. And losing people is the hardest part of life. But you're going to be okay. You just got to turn to him. Just got to let him help you. Give it to him.
Amen. Amen.
If you're looking for a church home,
or do you want to be part of a family?
If you're looking for a place to grow.
If you're looking for a place to worship.
If you have questions about your faith.
If you'd like to talk to somebody about being a Christian.
Come see us at Maplewood.